Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Just Another 20-something with me, Marissa. How are we doing today? I told ya, here we are again. Second week in a row. We're starting anew. Today is an exciting day for me because I just got my first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. Hell yeah, baby. I got Moderna. And it hurt. I don't love shots, but you know what? I'm helping the world, so I guess I can suck it up for one little shot. But yeah, I'm really excited. I'm happy to be a part of science and be able to do my part to stop the pandemic. So, hell yeah to that. I'm a little nervous for the next shot, though. I'm not gonna lie. I don't want a bunch of side effects. Obviously, who knows what'll happen because it affects everyone differently. I mean, one of my friends had no symptoms the next day. One of my other friends had a fever. Some people are out for like multiple days, so I don't really know what's going to happen. Me and my mom decided that we're going to bank it off of what her reaction is and what my brother's reaction is. Because if they, are just out for like too long, then I'm like, okay, then I know what to expect. And I can tell my work and be like, hey, so I'm getting the second shot and I might be gone for a long time. Where I feel like this first one isn't too bad. I feel completely fine. Literally no problems at all. So that's good. And I don't want that to discourage anyone from getting the vaccine because it is okay if you have side effects. That just means the vaccine is working and it's doing its job. But I also totally get not wanting to feel sick because I can relate to that. I don't want to feel sick. I would rather just feel great all the time. But anyway, yeah. So I'm super excited to be vaccinated and I'm excited for the pandemic to be over. I don't know when that'll be, but hopefully sooner rather than later. Let's see. What else has been exciting? Oh, well, I mean, let's just, start talking about today's episode. Today, I'm super excited because I finished a book. Yeah, you heard it right. I know for every favorites podcast that I've done in the last few months, I'm always like, okay, and this is my favorite book, even though I haven't read it. And that doesn't make any sense. So I can't keep doing that, Like, I can't be saying, oh, look at this book that I did, and wow, and no. This time, though, I did read a book, and hilariously enough, it's not the book that I mentioned in either of those favorites podcasts. Nope. This book is called The X Talk by Rachel Solomon. And I'm really excited because today I'm going to talk all about this book and my review on it. Just kind of like our movie reviews, but a book review, which is kind of fun. I want to do that for all the books that I read because maybe it'll hold me accountable to keep reading and keep doing the things. And so I'm really excited. Also because, first of all, I'd just like to say this book was a very easy read. It's just like a classic romantic comedy kind of book. And I love those books. So if you don't like romance books, you're not going to probably love this one. It's not like heavily, well, no, they talk about romance quite a bit. It's not like a romantic novel, like if you know what I mean. Like it's not like those. Technically, it's just a novel. That's what it says. But it's probably under like the romantic comedy genre. So, I mean, that's what it says. It says public radio co-hosts navigate mixed signals in this sparkling romantic comedy debut. So yeah, so it's, it's just like a romantic comedy movie put into a book. And I really enjoyed it. It's very cheesy, but it's sweet. And there's definitely like some parts that I'm going to talk about that I didn't like because, I mean, it wouldn't be me if I wasn't complaining about something. But overall, I would say this book is probably like a 7.5 out of 10. Like, not bad. So yeah, so let's just dive right into it. So, the X Talk. We meet our protagonist of the book, her name is Shay Goldstein. She's kind of this quirky, shy girl. She's 28, I think, in this. Either 28 or 29. Actually, I think she's 29. And she's worked at Pacific Public Radio for over 10 years. She's in love with radio, and she's just, once she went out of college, she just went straight into work, and this is what she's been doing for her entire life. Her dad was really into radio, and we learn that her dad had passed away when she was 18, so she has had a hard time dealing with that, and so it talks about that a lot in this book. And so this is also based in Seattle, by the way. So this is also another reason why I was really excited to get this book, because if you guys don't already, I posted on my Just Another 20-something Instagram. I was posting on a story. I was trying to do one of those like vlog style stories, like follow me around while I do this. I haven't done one since because I'm literally the worst at social media. I always forget that you can post things. Or like literally when I started the follow me around, I like ended it at like 2 p.m. because I was like, oh yeah, I was doing this. Like I literally just forget. So catch me probably never being an Instagram influencer. I seriously don't know how people do it. Then again, I guess if it's my job, maybe it's easier. But yeah, so I posted on my story being like, should I buy this book? It's literally about like podcasts. I mean, it's mostly about public radio, but they do also have podcasts in this. So it's like public radio / podcast based in Seattle. Like, this is my brand. This is me. Should I buy this book? And everyone said yes. So I bought it. So yeah, so it's really fun because they definitely like put little anecdotes about Seattle. Like they'll reference like Capitol Hill a lot, or like Green Lake and like stuff like that, like places that I know, which is fun. They also definitely have some other things about Seattle that I'm just like, I wonder if this person is even from Seattle. Actually, why don't we take a little look-see? Let's take a little 5-minute pause and see if this woman is from Seattle. Rachel Lynn Solomon. Where are you from, miss? Where are you from? Oh, she does live in Seattle. Huh. Well, you know, she kind of makes her, she makes it sound like she's not from Seattle, because sometimes the little anecdote she gives about it seems just so stereotypical. Like, she'll be like, oh, classic Seattle, it's raining again. And I mean, like, yes, we rain here, we get it, but, I don't know. Like, I feel like that's what every book or every movie that's based in Seattle, they just are like, oh, it's raining. Oh, we rain. It's like, okay, not all the time, okay? Like right now, it's sunny and beautiful and not rainy. Anyway, not important. So, back to the book. So we meet Shay. She has black hair, with these big bangs, and she never knows what to do with it, which, let me just say, I hate when women are portrayed this way. And I know that these women exist, like, I'm not trying to be mean, but I just hate it when people write these books about women and they're like, oh yeah, like, I just put my hair in a ponytail because I didn't know what to do with it, and I'm never gonna learn, and I just don't really care about that. And I'm just like, that's just boring. That's just boring to me. I don't like those descriptors on women. Who cares if she does put effort into her appearance? Who cares? Or who cares if she doesn't? This isn't like so pertinent to her personality. Like, I don't care that she wears her hair in a ponytail every day because she doesn't know what to do with it, because that's exactly what Shay does. There's so many times where it's like, oh, your hair is in a ponytail, and then of course just the classic, like, she takes her hair out of the ponytail and the guy, which I'll get to, is like, oh my gosh, I like your hair out of the ponytail. And I'm like, oh my god, come on. So she's like your classic nerd, but she's a nerd for public radio. And so she has, like, literally immediately we get to learn that she hates this guy, Dominic Young, who works at the station with Shay. And he is new. He's only freshly graduated because he makes the point to talk all about his master's degree, and he will never let that go. So he's probably about 24, and then she's 29. So that is interesting that, like, you know, obviously we know that these are the love interests. So it's like the love interest is with the girl being older, which this is just like me in my head. And I think it's just, you know, me being stupid. But I can never picture like an older girl being with a younger guy. So like when I'm reading this and I'm like, you know, playing the visions in my head of like what everything looks like and what's happening, I can't picture her older. So that was hard for me, even though I know she is. And yeah, so he is, you know, supposedly very, very cute, but she doesn't think so at first. Classic, because she hates him. They have this rivalry, and they're constantly bickering, constantly having a hard time, whatever. And he's just very serious. Like, he's like, I want to do real radio. Like, I want to be talking about the hard-hitting stuff. And Shay right now is just a producer for this show called The Puget Sounds, which is kind of cute. I like that name, Puget Sounds. Because, I mean, for one, I live in the Puget Sound, and two, it's like, you know, it's kind of creative, kind of cute. But yeah, so it's the Puget Sounds. It's kind of just like, I don't want to say like a filler piece, but like they talk about very like basic stuff. Like in the beginning, this first one that they were doing was that they were doing like a piece on dogs, and they were gonna like interview a dog specialist. So if that doesn't give you any indication on what that's about, that's what Puget Sounds is. And she had been the producer for 10 years, you know, whatever. So Dominic then is like, hey, by the way, I have a really big story that I want to talk about, because he's never been on air. And he's like, I want to say it. I want to talk about it. And so he went to Kent, who is like, you know, the head of the public radio station, and he's like, I want to say this piece. And Kent was like, yeah, sure, whatever. And so he's like, yeah, go on Puget Sounds and say it. And so Shay's like, are you kidding me? So she's super pissed off. She hates this guy. But when he talks about his little like news piece, which is basically just that like the mayor is really sketchy, I think. Kind of forget. So it was very, very anticlimactic. But yeah, so basically, yeah, the mayor has been like sketchy. And everyone just went crazy. Everyone was like, oh my gosh, Dominic is amazing. I like love what he's saying, because they get like callers, you know, to call in and they'll ask questions and whatever. And so Shay's pissed off because she's like, hello, he interrupts my show. Apparently he does better than I do, and this is too much for me. So that's how it starts off. We know that Shay hates Dominic. Dominic is just like, you know, this very stoic 24-year-old, which is odd. And yeah, so that's our little opening scene. Then we kind of get to know a little bit more about Shay and her family dynamic. So Shay's mom obviously is a widow since her husband died, and she had been dating this guy who she worked with at the Seattle Symphony, which is amazing. They both like sat right next to each other in their little violin area. And he also is a widow. So they, you know, got together, found love. And the mom, which I forget her name. I don't even know if they say. No, they just say my mom. So Shay's mom, they all go out to dinner. It's like Shay, her mom, this guy, I think his name is Phil. Amina, who is Shay's best friend, and her boyfriend TJ, they all go out to dinner, you know, just having a grand old time. I think they like hang out a lot as like a family, those fivesome. And Shay's mom ends up proposing to Phil, and they say yes. So that's kind of also a big plot point throughout the whole book, is Shay kind of figuring out how she feels about this new guy coming in, and not necessarily like taking the role of her father, but more of just like, okay, it's time to move on from like grieving my father. Which also, spoiler alert, she has a very hard time with dealing with the death of her dad. And it's talked about a lot. Like, you can tell that has affected the relationships she's been in, the friendships that she's made, what she's chosen for a career, what she does in her life. Like, she's very stagnant because of her dad passing away, and she can never get over it. So that's a little interesting. I feel like I've mentioned this before, but usually when I read a book, I am not a huge fan of the main character. And shocker of the day, I'm not a huge fan of Shay. It's sometimes she's good, and sometimes I'm like, yeah, okay. Sometimes I'm like, oh my God. And I don't want to make it be like, she needs to move on from her dad, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, she sort of needs to move on from her dad. I don't know. Obviously, I cannot relate to it in any way because my dad has not died, and I've never had to go through a parent dying. And so I have no idea how that feels. Maybe this is totally normal, and it probably is, or whatever. I'm just being cynical because I can. So I don't love that, you know, her father's death has inflicted so many things of her life, especially because she is like 29, like going into 30. And I'm not saying you need to have everything together at 30 because you definitely don't. And I probably won't when I'm 30, like guaranteed. I still don't really know what I'm doing with my life. So how would I know what I'm doing, 7 years from now? Actually, it's more like 6.5. But anyway, so I'm not trying to be mean, but there's just some things that she does that annoys me. And I feel like it is because she's just like not moving forward with her life. And so one of the things that she talks about a lot in regards to like how her dad affected her relationships is that she's been in a bunch of like just casual relationships. And then she says, I love you, like really fast. And then the guys are like, oh my God, bye. And then they leave. And then she's really upset and blah, blah, blah. And so I don't really understand how her father dying made her do this, but that's what she claims it's from. And yeah, so she's just kind of weird when it comes to relationships because she's just like, they never love me and they just leave and I get attached too quickly and blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, oh yeah, that's annoying. I can see why people think that's annoying. So anyway, so back to what we were talking about. So the mom proposes to Phil. Great. Shay has to then, try to figure out how to move on from her dad's death and like how to move forward. And Amina, her best friend, is having a bunch of interviews for this job out in Virginia. And so that also hurts Shay. See, maybe this is what I'm not liking about Shay. She's turning all of these situations that are supposed to be happy for like the people in her life, and she's turning it around to make it be like, well, how does this affect me and how am I upset by it? Because like when her mom proposed to Phil, she like immediately was like upset, didn't know how to feel about it, whatever. Which I mean, like, I can understand, but at the same time, it's been 10 years since your dad died. Your mom has been extremely happy with this other guy. Try and be happy for her. And like also at the same time, like Phil and her mom have been dating for, I don't know how long, but like at least a good amount of time to where it's like, okay, yeah, I'm used to him. I'm used to his family. And I'm used to all of us being together. So what is literally the difference of them then getting married? Because she does make a comment. She's like, oh, I didn't think I'd be going to my mom's wedding before mine. And it's like, ugh, I hate that. Like, don't do that. Just be happy for your mom. Like, who cares if your mom gets married before you do? That literally, this isn't like her first marriage. This is her second marriage. And even if it is her first marriage, who cares? Ugh, I don't know. So that kind of bugged me. And then when Amina's like, interviewing for this other company, she's like, but if Amina leaves, then I have no friends. And what am I going to do without her? And it's like, okay, girly, you need to make some new friends. You need to get up and get going on your life. And this is annoying. But luckily, she does have some character development. So thank God for that. Anyway, so this is all happening. And, she's going off about how she, like, hates Dominic to Amina. And Amina's just like, is he cute? Like, do we like this guy? And she's like, no, how could you ever say that this guy is cute? And then, of course, we, like, get some inner dialogue, and she's like, well, I guess he's sort of cute. Like, he shows his forearms a lot, and that's, like, pretty hot. I'm like, oh, my God. So, anyway, fast forward. After, you know, the whole thing happened with Dominic and the mayor and everything, like, he really blew up. Everyone was really liking him. But Kent pulls everyone together from the, you know, public radio station and is like, so we are going to have to make some budget cuts. And these budget cuts, you know, like, we are going to have to take away some of our shows, and we're going to have to let people go, you know, whatever. So it turns out almost everyone is going to be freaking fired from this. I mean, like, Dominic isn't even a part of a show. I think he's just like, I don't even know what he's doing. But since he doesn't, like, have a show to be a part of, they're like, okay, you're cut. Shay has a risk of getting cut because her show, Puget Sounds, is just, like, kind of the lowest rating show. So it's like, yeah, can't afford to keep that on. So they're going to cut that. And so they come up with a huge meeting trying to come up with some ideas of some shows on, like, because, you know, if they get, like, a good show idea, they're going to pitch it, they're going to, like, make it happen, and then they can keep some people on. Obviously, still some people are going to get fired. So they're trying to figure this all out. They're at the meeting, and they're throwing ideas out there, and, you know, Shay lands on an idea of, like, oh, what about, like a romance show, or, like, you know, something about relationships. And of course Dominic's like, that's not real news. Like, what are we doing? That's so stupid. And Shay's like, okay, Mr. Smartass, like, not all news needs to be, like, super serious and dark. Like, we need some other stuff going on. And so Kent was like, oh yeah, like, I like relationships, but, like, what can we do to make it more interesting? And so people were like, oh, what if we had, like, a couple give advice? And he was like, okay, whatever. And then Shay goes, what if we had a couple of exes do the show together, give some advice on, like, you know, relationship stuff from two people whose relationship ended? And everyone went crazy over that idea. And it's really funny because I try to think, like, would I listen to a podcast with two exes talking about relationships? Possibly. I might, actually. That does sound a little interesting. Because, so, everyone goes crazy over this. They're like, that's a great idea. That's amazing. But who are we going to do? Like, who are those people going to be? And, you know, Dominic is like, oh, that's stupid. And then, so they're bickering during this meeting, Shay and Dominic, like, for everyone to see. And then the meeting ends, and Kent calls both of them into his office. And so he's like, so, by the way, you know, you guys were doing a lot of bickering back there. Didn't love that. Also, you guys are both most likely going to be let go unless you do that show that you pitched. And Shay was like, what? Like, what are you talking about? And he's like, you guys are going to be the exes in that podcast show. And you're going to pretend that you were dating, and then you broke up, and then here you are. And Dominic's like, well, I don't really want to lie. Like, that's not the point of journalism and radio and stuff. Like, I'm not going to create this huge fabricated lie. And Shay, of course, is like, oh, like, I don't want to lie either, but at the same time, I don't want to be jobless. So Kent's like, okay, think about it, you know. But yeah, you should lean towards doing it, because if you're not going to do it, you're going to be ex-nayed. You're out of the company, out of a job. So Shay's freaking out because this is all she's ever done for her entire life. And she's also kind of nervous because she's like, she's been a producer for 10 years. She's never been the actual host of a show. And so she's like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know, you know, like, what's going to happen. I don't know. So she calls Dominic and is like, hey, let me take you out to dinner. I need to talk to you. Obviously trying to pitch the idea to him, like, please, please, please do the show with me. And so they go out to dinner, and she literally begs him and is like, "Sir, I swear to God, you need to do the show with me." And he somehow gives in. He's like, "Okay, fine." And they shake on it. They're just going to do it for 6 months. They're going to lie, because it's basically the whole premise. They're going to have to pretend that they're exes, and they're going to do the show. So that's basically what happens. They tell Kent, they get the ball rolling. They have this girl, Ruthie, as their producer, who was also like co-producing with Shay earlier on the Puget Sound show. So Ruthie gets to keep her job, and they're just working together, and they're trying to make it work. So this ends up, obviously, with Shay and Dominic spending a lot more time together. They're going to have to start to get to know each other, because now they have to pretend that they were dating for 3 months and then broke up, and now, are doing the show together. And so this is obviously where the romance starts to kick in. Shay's constantly like looking at him, very much like, "Oh wow, like he's really cute, like, but I hate him." Like, "Oh, but I don't know, but like he is very nice to look at." And so that happens a lot. There is this one scene that I kind of want to like read a little snippet from, just because it's like, it's so weird. I mean, it's like weird, but also interesting. Let's see. Oh, okay. Here it is. So they're late at the office one night, obviously trying to like get their show all ready. Like they're pulling out their script, seeing how they're going to talk, and like auditioning. I read the word auditioning. They're practicing, how they're going to sound, whatever. So they end up drinking while they're doing this, which I don't know why that was a good idea. But anyway, so there's this scene. I'm literally going to read it because it's so weird. But like, you'll just have to see it. So preface, they have been drinking. Shay is going into the break room to get some water. Dominic follows her. When I can't reach the water glasses on the top shelf, he easily grabs one and hands it to me, showing off one of his particularly enviable 6'3" superpowers. Muster thank you as I hold it up under the refrigerator tap. "We still haven't figured out why we broke up," he says, leaning against the counter opposite the fridge. "Maybe we should keep it simple. Working together and dating got to be too much for us. That's not very exciting. It's fitting that we can't agree. Maybe you were intimidated by my raw sexual energy." I nearly choke on a sip of water. That's how unexpected this is coming from him. But hey, I can play this game too, especially with alcohol loosening my lips. Or you were never able to get me to orgasm. I've never had that problem before, he says without missing a beat. With just the two of us in this darkened space, I'm aware of how small the break room actually is. He shouldn't have followed me in here. I could have climbed onto the counter and grabbed a glass myself, because short people are nothing if not skilled counter climbers. But then he wouldn't be standing there in one of his top 10 infuriating leans, eyeing me from beneath a truly impeccable pair of lashes. Like, see, she's getting crazy. So the alcohol takes over. So we had a good sex life then. One corner of his mouth kicks upward. Maybe we weren't having sex. Something horrific happens then. I let out this completely non-human sound, a mix between a snort and a laugh and a gulp. I shrink back until my shoulder blades hit the wall. "What, you thought sleeping with me was a given?" he says. "Is my fictional self really that quick to put out?" "Oh my God, no. I was just, if we were dating for 3 months, then probably. I mean, maybe we didn't, but..." He's full on smiling now, as though amused by my incoherent babbling. I bring the water glass to my face so I can hide behind it. My sweater is draped across my desk, but I'm too warm in this thin black t-shirt. He's 6'3". He's a 6'3" heat lamp. "Shay," he says in a low voice, teasing. He inches forward, reaching forward to take the water glass away from my face and holding it level with my shoulder. Honestly, I'm flattered. Then he taps the cold rim of the glass against my cheek gently. A friendly little pat that sends my heart into overdrive. When he moves it away, I reach towards my face, holding a few fingers against the cold spot there. So anyway, that's the whole scene that I wanted to read, because it seems so weird to me, because I'm trying to picture, like, obviously this is supposed to be like a very sexual moment, very intense. The tension is rising. But I'm going to be honest. If a guy took my water glass and then held it up to my face and then took it away, I don't know. I don't know if I would be super turned on, but she's turned the freak on. I mean, I guess they're also like staring at each other. So maybe that could do it. I don't know. That scene just made me feel really weird. I mean, reading it was fine, but like she was just so like she doesn't let this scene go for a while. Like she keeps thinking about it for a long time, and I'm just like, okay, but like don't you feel like a little weird from this situation? I don't know, but she doesn't. She really liked that, and since that moment, she can't stop thinking about Dominic. She's just like, oh shit, I really want to have sex with this guy. He's really hot, but I thought I hated him, but maybe he's not that bad. I don't really know. Blah. So anyway, they start obviously doing their show, and it starts becoming a hit. Everyone really likes it, even though, you know, they're lying on air, which they were very nervous about. But everyone buys straight into it because they have this really great chemistry. Their bickering just sends everyone a frenzy, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, I want them to get back together, whatever. So anyway, this part is also really weird to me, to where I'm like, this doesn't even really make sense. But for some reason, Kent is like, okay, I feel like you guys, you know, oh, this is what it was. This is what brought it up. So they have callers onto the public radio, onto the show. And so they have a caller call in, and he's like, you know, I don't really believe that you guys dated before this. Like, I don't believe this. And this is also kind of like a little bit of a weird plot thing for me. I personally could care less if the person wasn't actually a couple. I mean, unless I was super invested, but like, you know, they make this huge deal of them being like, oh, you're lying to everyone, like you didn't actually date. But I don't know why that's such a big deal if they didn't date. Like, I don't feel like that's this huge lie that I would just be so heartbroken over. But everyone is. So this guy that calls in, he's like, I don't think you guys really dated. I can't see anything on social media. Like, he's stalking them, trying to figure out if they really dated. Like, do you just have nothing else to do with your time if you don't think this radio couple really dated? Like, that just seems weird to me. So he's going on, and Shay and Dominic, like, you know, they handle it well. They're just like, oh, well, we were, you know, we didn't want anyone in the office to know, so there's no pictures, and, you know, blah, 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 and, you know, they end the call. And so Kent calls them into their office later, and he's like, okay, that wasn't good. Like, people need to believe that you guys have dated. So I'm going to send you away on a weekend trip, and you guys are going to spend the entire weekend on Orcas Island and get to know each other because, you know, you need to make it seem like you guys actually dated. And that's, again, weird to me. Why would this happen? Like, why? What? Why would your boss send you on a trip to get closer with your, I don't know. But I also left out a big plot point before this. So right before the boss calls them in for this, Shay and Dominic are spending a lot of time together. You know, they're hanging out, and Shay's constantly like, oh, I wonder if he likes me. Like, I feel like he might like me, but I also don't know if I like him, and, you know, whatever. So it's going back and forth a lot. And Dominic asks her out to drinks one night, and she's like, oh, I can't. I have to feed my dog, because she also buys a dog in the book and whatever. So he's like, oh, wow, good excuse. Like, he thinks that she's lying, and he's like, no, I really have to feed my dog. So she ends up staying at home, and he goes out, but then he's drunk and is texting her. And so he gets really, really drunk to where she has to go pick him up from the bar and make sure he gets home okay. So while this is all happening, she gets him back to the house okay. He's like sobered up a little bit, and they end up kissing for a moment. And Shay then freaks out because she's like, oh, holy shit, what is happening? And Dominic's like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. And so he was like, oh, um, let's just like forget this happened. She's like, yeah, we'll forget it ever happened. I don't want to even think about it ever again. But, of course, her inner dialogue is like, oh, but I kind of don't want to forget about it. And I wonder if he actually really does want to forget about it. And it's like, ugh. Some of those parts are what really bother me, is her inner dialogue, because she's constantly thinking that this guy cannot possibly be into her. And that is also a thing that I don't like in characters that people write about women. Like, why does it have to be this thing where the woman is so worried if the guy likes them? Like, let's focus more on whether the girl actually likes the guy. Like, can't that be a thing? Like, it's just so annoying to constantly have this character who's like weak and feeble, and she just wants the guy to just fall in love with her and everything will be okay once he does. And it's like, ew. Ew. Who cares? I don't care about this. So those parts would always get me annoyed, because it's so painfully obvious that Dominic likes her. There's so many things that he does in this book that he literally will be like, you're so beautiful. And like, you're really amazing at what you do, and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, I can't believe he just like doesn't really want to be with me. It's like, yes, he does. Yes, he literally does, if you just had a conversation with him. Whatever. Anyway, so fast forward again. They go on the trip, and they literally cannot go one day without having sex. Because she brings up, she's like, I can't stop thinking about that kiss. And he was like, me either. And then they just, go straight into it. And then the next day, they don't talk about it. And so the next day, after the trip, she drives back to his place and drops him off. And then he kisses her goodbye. And she's like, oh, that's interesting. And so they have another conversation later, and they're like, okay, we probably shouldn't be a couple because of the show, and like that would probably be bad, and we need to pretend that we're not together. So he then, they decide to be casual. We'll just casually hook up, and it'll be fine, and it won't be messy at all. Totally. So they then, like have casual sex over and over and over again. They're like sneaking around, whatever. Again, it's obvious that these people are falling for each other, but no one says anything. Again, Dominic's constantly like, oh, you're just amazing. Like, the thing that actually is annoying about this is that he falls for her really fast, in my opinion. Obviously, I don't know the exact time span of like what this whole thing was. It could have been like, maybe, I don't think it was at their 6-month mark though. Like, I swear to God, it was only like 3 or 4 months that this took place. And so I don't know. I just don't understand how he's like all of a sudden super into her, because also at the beginning, they both hated each other. And I know that that's how that love trope goes, the enemies to lovers trope, which is one of my favorites. I understand that that's how that's supposed to work, is that they hate each other and then they love each other. But I feel like I didn't get enough angst. I needed more of the tension instead of just like 2 bits of tension with, the water glass and then the kiss scene. That was it. That's all the tension we got, because then they got into hooking up. And then like basically right when they started hooking up, he was pretty much in love with her, but she couldn't figure it out for some reason. Ugh. So that was kind of annoying. But yeah, so they're hooking up, whatever. Oh yes, okay. So we then go back to, because obviously while this is all happening, the mom is getting closer, in her wedding plans, and then Amina is going through her job interviews. So Amina ends up getting that job in Virginia, and Shay's obviously, kind of disappointed, but she's like, oh, well, I'll still be able to see her and whatever. But Amina immediately is like, I'm moving. I'm moving immediately. I'm moving to Virginia. TJ's coming with me. I'm ready to get out of Seattle. And then, so they like are going out to dinner to celebrate Amina, and she is shitting on Seattle so much. Like everything that she does, she's like, oh, can't wait to get away from this. So glad I'm fucking leaving. And she's like, okay, hey, like I know I'm supposed to be happy for you, but you're kind of hurting my feelings that you're so excited to like get away from me, basically. And Amina drops this bomb, which I have to say, I have to take Shay's side to this just because this was really rude. But basically, Amina was like, listen, I've wanted to leave Seattle for a long time. And like, I had a different job opportunity where I could have left. But that means I would have had to leave you, and like, you haven't gotten over your dad dying. And so I felt like I couldn't do that because I'm tethered to you. And Shay's like, tethered to me? Like, I'm sorry, but I didn't even know that this was a thing. Didn't even know that you had this job offer. I would have let you go. Like, obviously, like, I'm okay. But Amina was just like, no, you weren't okay. Like, all you do is work. You don't like do anything. Work consumes you because you're so obsessed with this job because it's what your dad loved to do, and you need to get over it. Which I guess I was, I guess the beginning of this podcast when I said that I didn't love that thing about Shay. Now I'm like siding with Shay, but like, I guess I can see where Amina's coming from, but she can't. It's not fair to blame Shay on why she didn't choose that job, claiming that it was because she was staying for Shay. It's like, you never told Shay about that. Shay had no idea. I'm sure she wanted you to go take this job if it's something that you really wanted. Like, she never wants to hold back her friends. So that made me annoyed. And it made me annoyed that she said that. But I can also agree with Amina because it sounds like Shay hasn't been a good friend for a long time because she's been so like enveloped with her dad dying, and then she just like threw herself into work. That's all she ever does. But the other thing about that is Shay is really passionate about public radio. Like, that is something that she actually really, really does love, genuinely. Like, they talk about it a lot in this book, all about the stuff that she likes about it. So it's like, it's not like she's doing a job that she just doesn't like just because her dad loved it. Like, her dad loved it, but so does she. And that was like their bond. And I don't know. So anyway, they end up getting in a huge fight and don't talk. So this is in chapter 25. I guess there's only like, okay, there's about 100 more pages left of the book. And they don't talk until like the very last few pages, which is pretty sad. That was also another thing that, because I immediately like looked up reviews on this book afterwards. And someone commented, they were like, what is the point of these like side characters? Like, we don't know anything about them. And that is kind of how I feel about Amina. Like, she's not really in this book. Like, she's in a few little pieces, you know, it's known that this is her best friend. Then they have this huge fight, and then we don't even hear from Amina for a long time, like the rest of the book. And I'm like, oh. And she like moves to Virginia, and she doesn't even come back until like the wedding, and that's when they make up, Shay's mom's wedding. So it's like, whoa, you're like gone, you moved away, you could care less. Like, they don't even talk or make up or anything. I'm like, wow, that sucks. So I don't love that, like how the friendship just seems kind of weird. Like, truly the only people you know the most of are obviously Shay and Dominic, but it's just interesting. So anyway, so she calls Dominic over because now they're like, you know, hooking up all the time, hanging out all the time. They're basically dating, but neither of them wants to admit it. And he literally is like, do you want to meet my parents? She's like, oh yeah, that would be fine. What? No, that means he likes you. Like, ugh. She's so stupid. So, you know, she meets the parents, but then she starts getting freaked out because she's like, I can't do a casual thing with someone that I'm like basically falling in love with. Like, I'm meeting his parents. I want to be his girlfriend. But instead of, I don't know, telling him that, I'll read you this whole thing because it pissed me off so bad. This is what they do on their ride home from meeting the parents. They had like a great time. Basically, they were in love with each other. This is what she does. I'm not sure if I can do casual anymore. He pulls the parking brake. What? God, don't make me repeat it, but I do. And when I feel his hand on my shoulder, I shrink against the seat. I hate how right this feels. And that's the reason I have to end it. Prevent something seemingly casual from warping my sense of reality when I fear it already has. Because of my parents? The confusion in his tone is evident. No, not that. Well, kind of, but no. I like you too much to keep pretending I don't. I like you too much to not get attached because I'm already far more attached than I've ever thought I'd be, and anything else is going to kill me. That's in her head, by the way. That makes a lot of sense. I'm sorry. I want to be able to explain it, but I'm not sure I can. With the show, it's just too complicated. There, that can be my excuse. He looks away like I've just told him I'm breaking up with him, which in a way I am. His face is a mix of confusion and hurt, his brows knit together, his eyes wide. If I look at him a moment longer, I might try to take it all back. See, like, okay, this little paragraph right there, that is showing you that he is very sad that you guys are not going to be hanging out anymore. Like, he wants to be with you, and he's very, very upset by this. If it was just a casual thing, if you were just like, hey, I don't really want to do this anymore, he'd be like, okay, whatever. There you go. Shay, he says, let's talk about this, please. I shake my head. I can't. I'm sorry. I just can't. And before he can say anything, I swing open the car door, head for my house. And I have to force myself not to look back. So this is how she handles a lot of situations. She just leaves. She like throws a weird little like temper tantrum thing and then flees and then doesn't talk to anyone. And I'm like, okay, good one. So then they stop having sex, obviously. Dominic and her have to go back to being coworkers. And they have to pretend that everything is fine, even though when they are on the radio, it does get a little awkward because they're both in love with each other, but they won't say it. So anyway, they do this podcast episode that Shay had really been wanting to do about like how you like lose a loved one and then you can like how you can love someone again. And she brings on her mom and Phil so they could talk about it. And that podcast does really, really well. And it gets them in like the top 100. And so they get invited to PodCon in Texas. So Dominic and Shay are really excited. And wait, was this before? Oh, yes. Okay. So they get accepted to PodCon and they're going to go. Before that happens, Dominic pulls Shay aside and is like, listen, if we're going to go to PodCon, we need to be on like good speaking terms because from their weird little breakup, they just like didn't talk to each other, didn't hang out, didn't do anything. And so he's like, listen, we have to like be able to talk to each other, which yes, Dominic, I agree. Shay's being annoying. So he's like, listen, like I like you. And she's like, what? He's like, I don't like, it's not that I miss having sex with you. Like, yes, I do. But like, I miss being with you and I miss hanging out with you and I want to date you and I want you to be my girlfriend. And she's like, oh my God, I want to be your girlfriend. And so then they start dating. So now they're secretly dating. They go to PodCon. But then they're like, oh, you know what? This would actually be really good radio if we just tell everyone at PodCon. Like, let's just announce that we got back together. Still sort of lying, like still pretending that they dated in the past, but be like, look, we got back together and now we're together and now we can do the show. And then it's like less of a lie because at least they would be actually dating and giving advice. Whatever. And everyone ships them. Like, they get messages all the time being like, oh, I would love if they got back together. La, la, la. So, you know, not a bad plan. So they go to PodCon and they're doing like a live show. And it gets to the part where they start like asking for people, you know, to chime in or ask any questions. And they've noticed that this whole time that everyone was acting kind of weird. Like while they were doing their show, not a whole lot of people were in it. It seemed very tense, very awkward. And this lady comes up and she's like, so, okay, let's see if I can find it. Oh, he goes, yeah, I have a question. Did you think it was funny to deceive your listeners like this? And Shay's like, huh? So as it turns out, there is a tweet that went out basically exposing them, being like they never dated and this whole thing was a lie. You know, thanks, whatever. And again, this is something that just doesn't make any sense to me, but the audience is pissed. They're like basically booing them off the stage. They're like getting, the mic and being like, how could you do this? How could you lie to us? Whatever. And so Shay's, tries to take control, and she's like, fine, okay, you know what? You're right. We didn't actually date. We didn't even like each other. Then we started the show. Then we started to really like each other, and now we're dating. Like, Dominic, back me up. And Dominic has intense stage fright. And so he is like having a full-on panic attack at the show, freaks out, runs off the stage, doesn't say anything. And so everyone's like, boo, fuck you guys. And so Shay has to leave and is like utterly humiliated. So, as you can imagine, Shay is not impressed with Dominic. So, she takes a second before she goes and yells at him. So she goes to Kent because this is actually kind of a little bit of a plot twist. But she figures out that the person who tweeted, exposing them, ended up being Kent. The literal, owner, or I guess the boss of the public radio station sent out the tweet. Like, the person who made them do this show together so that this radio station could get money, then exposed all of them. And this was why. Apparently people really wanted to pick up the show and do it in a different place, and they could get more money. But he didn't want that to happen. He obviously wanted to keep it all to himself. And so he was like, you know what? I'm just going to end the show. I'm just going to ruin it for them. And so then he sends out that tweet, and then everyone was like, oh, well, fuck these guys. I don't want them on my show. And so now, the show's over. You can't really come back from that. So, yeah, he basically pulls in. It's supposed to be all of them. It's supposed to be Shay, Dominic, and Ruthie, but it ends up just being Shay and Ruthie. And he's like, yeah, so, you guys could be part-time producers if you want, but you might be out of a job. And Shay's like, literally, fuck you. Because this guy also, Kent, is very misogynistic throughout this entire book. So sexist, terrible, only favors the guys. And yeah, so she finds out that Dominic is guaranteed a hosting job, but Shay and Ruthie would have to fight each other. I mean, one of them would have to choose who the part-time producer could be, and then one of them would have to go. And so Shay's like, fuck that, no, I'm out, screw you. So she quits. Ruthie also ends up quitting. And so she goes back to Dominic, and she's saying all this shit, and she's like, how could you leave me on that stage? But don't worry, you still have a job, and blah, blah, blah. And then he says something where kind of initiating that he is going to take that job. And that just makes Shay so pissed off. She's like, after all of that, you're going to still work for the guy who ruined our careers and basically said, I'm shit out of luck. You're still going to work for him. And he was like, and so they end up breaking up, obviously. This time I can be on Shay's side because that was a little shitty. So basically where Shay is at right now, Amina and her aren't talking. Her mom's getting married, doesn't know how she feels about that. And now her new boyfriend, they broke up, and she's just miserable, terrible, can't stop thinking about Dominic, la 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 la. Anyway, so the wedding happens. Amina and her make up, yay. And so she's like, great, I have a friend, but now she lives in Virginia. And so she's just trying to figure out her life. She's looking at job offers, trying to figure stuff out, because she doesn't know what she wants to do. She's been in public radio for 10 years. She has no idea what she's doing. She's 29, having a midlife crisis. Except not even midlife. She's having a crisis. And so that's when, one day, she's hanging out with Ruthie and Ruthie's new girlfriend, and they're all chilling. She's looking for some jobs, and Ruthie's like, oh my god, you need to turn on the radio station right now. And she's like, what? No, I don't want to listen to that crap. And she's like, no, you have to right now turn it on. So she turns it on, and Dominic is literally on air. It's during this pledge drive, and the way he's making money is basically just going on this huge rant saying how much he messed up, how he loves Shay. He says on the air that he's in love with Shay, wants to be with her. He wants to apologize. He wants to make it all better. And so then there's this huge romantic scene that Ruthie drives Shay over to the radio station. Shay bursts in through the door and she's like, I love you too. And yeah, so then they get back together. That part actually was pretty cute. I have to say, my favorite thing about this entire book is the way that this woman wrote Dominic. And I've been seeing a ton of TikToks about this, but the way women write men is the way, like, that's the men that I want to date, is the ones that are written by women, which just means, am I even attracted to men at all? I don't know, because I'm attracted to a woman's version of a man, which of course is the best version ever. No offense, but it's just like, the way she wrote him, I definitely fell in love with him. I wish Shay would have been more into it. Like, I wish, there's so much that I wish. But anyway, so yeah, so then they get together in the end, and there's a little epilogue where they move in together, which was a little weird. See, this is also weird. They move in together after 3 months of dating, and he's only 24. Oh, and there's this big, huge other plot point. He's only been with one other person because, again, he's 24, and he, like, dated this girl all throughout college, then they broke up. So he's only been with one person. Now he's just in love with Shay, and, like, what? Like, they're just gonna be together forever? Like, he's only gonna date 2 people, and he's 24, and he's moving in with her? Like, that seems a little weird. But then also for Shay, it's like she's 29, so, like, she wants that to happen. I don't know. But overall, I know I just shat on it for about an hour, but it actually was really good. I really enjoyed it. It was a nice, easy read, and I feel like it's a good read to get me back into reading, because I know the next 2 books are going to be a little bit more intense, where this is, like, light and flowy and had some cheesy moments and definitely a lot of weird plot points that don't really make sense. But you know what? It was perfect. It was perfect for what I needed, and it was cute, and it was summery, and honestly, I wouldn't mind falling in love with someone and having a little podcast show together, because that's how they ended as well. So she's obviously still looking for jobs, but they decided to start a podcast, because that's where they were more popular on, was because they had the public radio station, and then it went into a podcast, like, if you didn't listen to it live. So they actually were super popular as a podcast. So then they became little podcast hosts together, and that's really cute. I do like that idea. So if anyone's listening and wants to date and wants to be on the show with me and be my host, there we go. Kidding. Totally kidding. But yeah, so that was the X Talk. Like I said, if you're into cheesy romantic stuff like that, I recommend it. And I know I obviously just said the entire book out to you, but it's very different when you actually read it. So read it for yourself. They do have some good saucy scenes in there, which I definitely love in a book. It's kind of disappointing if a book doesn't have those scenes. So if you're into that as well, definitely a good one. Definitely a good one. But yeah, so that kind of ends today's episode. And before I finish, I just want to say we reached a big milestone together as a podcast. We reached over 500 downloads, which is so awesome, because this is literally going to be episode, I think, 24 or 25. I don't know which order I'm doing, but we've only hit about like 25 episodes, and we have 500 downloads. That's freaking awesome. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to see, where this podcast is going to go. Like I said, it's really just something fun for me to do, and I'm honestly ecstatic that people are even listening to this, let alone, like, people have downloaded this 500 times. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's just crazy. And so I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful for all of you. And it would mean a lot if you left me a review on Apple Podcasts. That helps out my podcast a lot, so more people can find it and more people can listen and enjoy it, just like you guys have. So yeah, so that is where I'm ending today's episode. I hope you guys all enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you all next week. Bye.